I'm still learning about how this goes.
That's what.
Plus, we don't wanna waste Dustin's time.
Yes, they
All the time.
Are you enjoying it?
Uh-huh, nobody's
Okay.
yelling at me, so.
Touche.
Yeah.
Well, we can make the conversation drag on as long as you would like. Do you have a citizen comment that you would like to, I mean, we can really drag this on if you'd like.
Nope. You have heartburn?
So no citizen comments. Are there any discussion items that, I guess because there aren't any under there, then we just blow past it. He's giving me a thumbs up. Active agenda, we have approval of minutes from the May 11th meeting. Does anybody have any corrections or?
There's some typos.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
You know-
considering if you had to go off of
Well,
a
one
stream.
question, since Eric did the presentation on the White Cane, I'd have to ask him.
Okay.
About halfway down the first page. It says in 1964, the US Congress adopted a joint solution. right?
Resolution.
It should be resolution.
Yes.
Okay. You don't have it with you?
Well, you said there's multiple, so I'm
Yeah,
just
there
wondering if I
What?
can make a copy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm actually not done, but they're just, you
Oh, my
have,
goodness.
you have can for cane in a few
Okay.
different places.
Okay.
And how do you spell Kiwanis, those of you in Kiwanis?
K-I-W-A-N.
Oh, yeah, I spelled it
AI.
wrong.
And I think that's on the back of
Yep.
the top of the back page. I think you're in
I have the
Kiwanis, not
Kiwanis
on
song.
Kiwanis.
I did not know there was one.
I didn't either. I ran across it in the used bookstore and I'm going like,
About what?
Kiwanis songbook. It's about that thick.
Oh, for God's sake. Anyway, well, that's how far I can go. But they're just typos.
I'll
yes, I
blame it
can-
on the new program.
You have an AI program?
Well,
You
they have a
You
new,
have a voice to text?
no,
program?
they have a new civic clerk.
Oh.
And so the agenda is created online through a program, and then automatically updates to the website, and then you put minutes in there and you do the same thing and you gotta publish it, and so there's this whole process.
That's great.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good, we're just all getting used to it, but
So just
It's an
say,
easy out.
With some clerical corrections, I'd move
So-
the minutes approved.
I'd second.
All right.
Do we actually even need to second a minute thing? I don't know if it's Robert.
If
I
there,
don't
if there are
know.
no changes, that doesn't have to be voted on. The chair just announces they're approved. But if there are changes,
All right, so
the
it's,
group has to.
So I second.
then, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Active agenda item 2, or B, I'm gonna look at that, 88 budget. We have Dustin here. We will talk about the city's budget in accordance with 88.
Sure.
Wow, I'm out here.
I don't have anything formal prepared for today, other than to go through what was in the 2023 budget. I think I've come to you in the past, or come to this group in the past. In Public Works budget, typically we have what's under the line item called ADA improvements, and that's a $10,000 line item. And there is another one called funds dedicated to ADA/sidewalk compliance, and that was $50,000. The history on these two is the ADA improvements is generally, this goes back to my predecessor, Chris Davies added this item in there in that there was just a one-off out in the public. It's usually ADA ramps that, let's just do it. We're gonna go fix that one because we've either received a complaint or it's just a simple one project. And ADA ramps are typically running about $5,000 to $6,000 a pop right now, so that's maybe two. The other one, the $50,000 one, was used for, say, a private development is building, and they've done their they've done their frontage improvements, but we're short a half a block or 2 ramps or something like that. And so we utilize that money, and it's a bigger pot, though, that's $50,000. Those funds are not necessary, I mean, they're not earmarked towards any one specific project. That gives specifically me the latitude throughout the fiscal year to throw those towards those specific uses. Typically, they kind of get bundled together because you can see some sometimes they're kind of interchangeable. So those are the funds that have been dedicated to non-earmarked projects. My budget request for this year is, I'm requesting design in '24, and hopefully if there's funds available, construction in '25, the sidewalk on 17th from basically Winco up to the top of the hill.
Ooh, wow.
That one is, I'm trying to check down
I
all the
would
list.
use that one.
Yeah, that one, so what I'm doing, if you watch my presentation on Monday, is trying to identify all of the most common, we'll call them complaints, that the Public Works gets. Right now, it's 5th and Bryden, and 21st Street, so we're working on resurfacing those and getting those fixed. And then, so this one would be a
That,
17th sidewalk.
I use every road and test everything. There is one that I will not use, and it's 17.
Yep.
Just too deadly.
Yep, so I think I have 50,000 dedicated to one, so if you know the road, so it'd be on the, going up the hill, it'd be on the west side. There is sidewalk, basically to Regents, I think,
Yeah.
and then it just peters out and it gets really steep there. And so retaining walls, that adds the costs considerably. It's on the right side it's on the wrong side for Winco, but it's on the right side when you get to the apartments at the top.
And it's okay, the crossover's okay at the.
And that's,
19.
I'm trying to think more outside the box of, if it's more feasible and we have the right of way and it's cheaper to build it on the east side, we can put an RRFB at the top of the hill for the crossing. We can do whatever we want to cross them once we get to the top.
I'm commenting here because I got a lot of experience here. It's like the kids using bicycles, the bicycle folks, people, even pedestrians. Yeah, that could be, particularly if you've got it so that you can walk it at a 12%.
Yeah, so yeah, I wanna look at the feasibility, right away, feasibility as far as meeting ADA standards, cause you'll have to have the ramps.
Ramp and flat, ramp
Yeah,
and flat.
flats, but look into that, so that's 24, I think it's 50,000 I've got thrown out, it might be more, I can't remember what I put in for that's a request, so that's
That's
to the
great.
discretion of the council. There's two sidewalk, grant projects, so I've already gotten the approval from the state, and I think this body has already given me letters, so those are moving forward. One is to McSorley, and one is also 17th in front of Jennifer. Those two sidewalk projects are moving forward. I did reference, it's not in the 24 budget, it'll be amendment to the 23 budget. If we're doing a design build on the resurfacing of 21st Street, that one, anytime you do a mill and overlay, that is considered a significant modification, which requires the ADA ramps to be brought up to standard. So 21st Street, if the budget allows, will be resurfaced with new ramps this summer.
And then we have the one corner where the Toyota place is at, that actually they were supposed to put in, and the city made an agreement that you can wait till we do 23rd, which has disappeared.
Yep.
So that will be corrected. 'cause
That
it's
will
a
be
big-
correct, that is in our inventory, there's 36 ramps, 33 ramps, 30-ish ramps that will be replaced, I think, last
Yeah,
inventory.
21st Street, I have to use the road in several locations, although I have used it.
Yeah, that ramp at the corner of 16th and 21st is
Yes.
another, it doesn't get talked about a lot, but it is one of my pet peeves. So those are the ones off the top of my head, the big ones that are in my proposed 24 budget. At this point in the process, I have not made my pitch to the council. Mine is on the 20th something of this month. I've made my pitch to finance and the mayor. So those are the asks I've made. Obviously, we're way short as far as having an approved budget or even any indication of what they would be in favor of. So coming to this body, one, are those projects that you would support? Two, are there additional projects that you would like to see? I think Eric has already talked about one before the meeting. So if there's any correspondence, it probably is just best to go directly to the council. If you guys wanted to send a letter of support, letter of recommendation, or however you want to draft it, it's up to this body. But that's basically what I've got planned right now for ADA.
Okay. So I think one of us or something, we need to get you something to support you on this. And I would more than happy to bring up the thing we were talking about if you have a chat with one of them.
Regarding,
have
so
that chat.
Eric and I have been working on a project on Bryden, and if you watched, I can't remember what, today is Thursday, was it work session on Monday?
Yes.
Okay, so I made a presentation to the work, and it didn't get picked up in the paper, but I made a presentation to the work, at a work session to the city council, talking about Bryden specifically, and how the city has traditionally funded large projects like Bryden, and it's a federally funded project, and so we get roughly $500,000 in surface transportation funding. You have to build that up, and then when you have enough money for the project and it's your turn, the money goes into one pot in the state, so everybody takes their turn, wait for their pot to build up, then you move forward on a project. For a project the size of Bryden, and then we talk about the top of Bryden Canyon to Thane, today I think that's somewhere 20 million-ish. So do the math, that's 4 years, just for construction, not right-of-way, not right-of-way acquisition. So what I did Monday was to demonstrate to the council, it will be 2053 before Bryden will be completed from the top of the canyon to Thane, if you fund it the way we're funding it now. So, you know, we do these feasibility analysis, we start building forward to a design, we do a design, then we do right away. Costs just continue to escalate, so we're chasing a target that's running away from us. And so we can't get, you know, when the original analysis was done in 2010, right away for Bryden Phase 1, which is what we're designing now, was $210,000. The most recent estimate was $3.2 million, 3.1. So we can't, and that's just right away, that's not construction costs. So I'm trying to pressure the council and well, not pressure, but to educate the council that we aren't dedicating enough funds to do the projects that we need. And it's not getting cheaper and the roads aren't getting better.
16th and Bryden right away. I mean, there's been a lot of it, like in 16th, I understand there's a lot of encroachment on the right of way to the point of up to the people's porches.
Yeah, I'm not clear, so they went with a 5-lane section for that design.
Okay.
And so it pushed.
Bryden is gonna be what, a 6th lane or a 5 lane?
It's a 5.
And do we have similar encroachments on the existing right of way, like we have on 16th?
I'm not sure. I'm not familiar enough with that one.
I'm just curious because it's just like, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the first estimate on the right-of-way acquisition for Bryden Phase 1 was, I think, $6 million. The project was $14 million.
Right.
6 of that was right-of-way, so an $8 million project. and
So they
almost-
would know that, at that point, they would have gone to the
Yep.
plats.
Yeah, and so they trimmed it back. I learned later that it was kind of a spitball. All the parcels, whether you're acquiring a square foot or the entire lot, they threw the same
Same
administrative
number for each
costs.
one.
Yeah, and so that skewed the numbers, but we're still at 3 something.
Yeah. Well, do you need, or it would actually be beneficial from you to have a letter in support of what you're doing, but since it's this month and that's kind of an action item, the only thing I can think we can do is as individuals go and speak at the budget thing.
The budget, the 3 official readings of the budget are not until August. So you could take action July. My presentation will be in June, so if you guys, assuming the council will hear it, you can hear it, and then you can take action in your July meeting, if you have
I'm
one.
being polite. Do you see the smirk on my face? I don't know how many of those 3 budget things you've been to, but by the time those come up, the politics is extremely high.
Yeah, and I haven't figured it out myself yet.
No,
This is-
you
this is
haven't been here long enough.
My third one here.
Yeah. So, I'm just thinking even at the sorry, Mark had his hand up.
Finish your thought.
I was just thinking, I don't know if I can be there on the 20th, but I would be speaking as an individual, not on behalf of the Disability Advisory Commission. So it's on,
Let me get you the date. It last week of June.
Okay,
So it is,
is that on Monday?
it is a Monday, so it is
26th.
26th.
Okay. I don't have a lot going on that day, good. So what time do you do
I believe it is 5:15. It's showing up on my
it?
calendar.
So it's a nightly meeting deal?
Yep.
So, city council.
Well, no,
and-
hold on, it's the 27th, it's Tuesday.
Tuesday.
So that last week, we have 3 budget meetings back to back to back that week, and so the Public Works one is Tuesday, 5:15 to 7:30.
Okay, and that, if we make a comment, we'd be making it a public comment before the meeting actually starts.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have a chance when you're talking it to stand up and speak in support of it.
Correct.
Okay, so basically, their start, we just need to know specifically what we're tagging. Is that something you could send an email to the staff here, who could then distribute it out to us, so we'd have a better idea?
Yeah, I can make sure Nikki has, so I am submitting a formal memo,
Okay.
a budget memo that outlines all of the requests that we're making, and then I'll have a PowerPoint presentation that matches it, so I can make sure you guys have
Yeah,
the memo.
I just make a public records request right now for those, so that helps.
Yeah, it'll be done, I have to be in Boise the week before, so it'll be done 2 weeks before that. In fact, it will be, it may be done next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's like Tuesday of next
Yeah,
week.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate the information, so I've got it on my calendar.
Can we as a group authorize you to speak for the,
I think that's an action item.
Well, it does say possible recommendations to city council.
Yeah, that's why I put it on here as an action item.
Oh,
because-
so it is an action item.
Because I thought you guys might wanna make a recommendation.
Good thinking. So, anyone who could be there, I mean, I'd make a motion that we have a representative or representatives who choose to be there that can speak on behalf of DAC to support the budget requests from the Public Works Director.
I amend that motion to make it be Eric Peterson.
So Eric Peterson, or, because my daily, I don't know what's gonna happen to Maine because of the health issues. And I could be there, stand up, and then hit the ground. Then I gotta ask for a reasonable accommodation to actually talk about it later.
Would a letter not do the same thing and then also cover us in case we don't have the right person to be there?
A letter's always good. I mean, we could do, we're not gonna be able to meet to approve it, but we could say that the chair can draft a letter of support
Okay.
and submit it to council. That would be let's finish the first motion. We have a motion on the table as that
For
the
Eric.
amendment. I say any representative, because that gives us flexibility. I will tell you that you, Mark, anyone could actually make the presentation.
But if you are in the capacity to do so.
Absolutely, I'm gonna be there, either as an individual or representative, and I'd be happy to speak on behalf of DAC, but I'm only gonna speak what DAC supports. And if I separate and I have something else I'm gonna comment on, I will make it very clear that I'm speaking as an individual and not on behalf of DAC.
I don't know how to work.
And just
So-
say, call for a vote.
Call for a vote, all in favor?
I
Aye.
then ask for anyone not, or just whatever.
Anyone opposed?
Anyone, this is what most people forget, anyone abstaining?
Oh.
Yeah, it's actually, you wanna make it part of the record.
Do we have anyone abstaining?
No.
All right, Mark.
Justin, I assume you had some sort of alternative budget at the franchise fee increase passed?
Well,
Well, let me rephrase that. The city had a plan what they were gonna do with that extra money, didn't they? And it was supposed to be streets.
yes, so that, I didn't work on that specifically, that came out of the mayor's office. My
Oh,
understanding
interesting.
in the work that I had with that is that it was going to be leveraged for capital, so that would have gone directly, so,
I had private conversations with the mayor.
what we have right now, so that franchise, we have 800 in revenue, we have 800 and change from the existing franchise. So we have Sparklight, Avista, Port of Lewiston, and Sunshine Disposal all pay a franchise fee, totaling roughly $836,000. So that additional 2% from Avista, which I think is would about double that roughly, so we'd be up to 1213. My understanding was it would have gone towards capital for reconstruction. I know whether it was on the record or off the record, the mayor would like to have bonded that money, instead of waiting for it to build up in the pot, you can bond that because it is a bondable revenue source, and then construct a whole road, whether it was 21st or Main Street. But I don't believe, I mean, it wasn't in the ballot language. I had plenty of roads identified in the transportation plan for reconstruction, whether it was 21st, Main Street, throw it to Bryden, Thane, those types of roads. So it would have gone towards capital.
Interesting.
Eric?
I've been involved in the franchise fee process in the past in trying to get money for ADA expenses. It didn't get done either, but the one thing you have to realize with the franchise fees is the city cannot advocate for or against. They're basically just presenting it. There has to be other groups that advocate for it outside the city, because the city is forbidden from doing that. So I will tell you
There's
as,
a lot, actually.
yeah, I would tell you as an individual, the concept, and I have done this in the past, I've been involved in projects like the jail. We work that around to get so that certain things could be done. What you get is a reliable income flow. Then you can do a bond. In the case like the jail, you're doing a lease for yearly. That can be, it gets complicated, and I think they fixed that, or hope they do. But so, same concept here, is like you got that income flow. All right, then you can get a bond, and you can sell it to the public. You'll get municipal bonds or something like that. Anywhere it goes, you'd be lucky if you get your hands on it, because generally it's the rich people that get them. But that would pay for you issue the bond, a lot of money comes in, and that money is targeted. What we want is targeted to a certain event. Now, that's where it gets kind of tricky, because it's like the two things that really need it are 21st Street, Thane, Bryden needs a lot more, I think. So the two that I would hit, and I know other people thought about hitting, are Thane and actually Main Street and 21st Street. I don't know if Thane was in the concept.
Not at this point, not that, no.
So it'd be Main Street or 21st, and in my mind, using them all, watching them develop over time, Maine has been dramatically improved as to access for a disabled individual. I can make it end to end and not be off a sidewalk and not really have any the access issues that I have like on Thane. 21st Street is the worst for access and needs the most actually kind of improvement, but it's also the roads in horrible condition. So anyway, that's kind of what you're not going to hear and wasn't picked up by the papers, is the city cannot do this. So if it's going to get out and do it again, it needs support. We are part of the city
Only when we sit in
as
session.
DAC members. What we do as individuals, as long as we distinguish the separation, is our business.
Well, I think it was a squandered opportunity. It's just tragic, how it was put before the voters and not really promoted, and the outcome was no surprise. And it just was
Nobody knew what it was for.
very
It was just more
unfortunate.
tax.
Well, the voter turnout itself shows that nobody knew it was on the ballot, when it was the only thing on the ballot for a primary election in May. So what was voter turnout, 11% or something?
So it can be run again, and
Oh,
it should
of
be
course
run
it can
again.
be run again.
And the more that there's people saying, run it again, so this is a citizens kind of initiative. If the citizens want to speak and get together and support it, it's much like we did with the high school. And I was on that one. You go out there, you put together a team, you start talking about it, you go out there and start building your support, and you get it running, and you work with the city, understanding how the city's hands are tied. And they cannot work with you or not work with you, they can only simply run the franchise and see what the citizens say. Is that an accurate way of saying it, Mark? You're much better at.
Close enough.
Oh, fix it, for me, Mark.
Well, they can publicize that there is a campaign, or an election, that there is a ballot measure.
Yes.
And where it is and what it's for. They just can't do
They
any
can't
advocacy
Right,
for it, and we really didn't see any of that either, so.
yeah, so it's something that's, it's there, but politically, it needs more strength. And the school, we didn't get the school on the first run either. It takes several runs, many times. Oh my God.
Can I clarify what you voted for? Are you writing a letter? Is Eric going?
I'm
Or-
going.
I'm sorry, there was
We
like.
did not get to a second motion for
Okay.
writing a letter.
Okay,
I would move that the chair, based on our discussion here today, which is available on live stream, write a letter to council in support of the budget request by Public Works for this area.
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays?
Just go opposed.
Opposed? Abstaining? All right,
That's it.
motion passes.
And if you have any specific projects that I didn't already discuss that you would like to see considered within the budget that I didn't include, please, you can communicate those to me or communicate those directly to the council.
Have I communicated it clearly enough about
I think so. Yes, let me work on that.
Yeah, if you would, I'd appreciate it.
I will say that there is ADA in other budgets as well. I know that my HR budget has 7,900 dedicated towards ADA, for accommodations.
I would assume the Parks Department would have.
Parks
quite a
probably
bit.
has
Facilities
money
has quite-
allocated, and then library. probably
Library
has.
would, yeah.
Mhm.
So I haven't looked at the budget, but thinking again, the transition plan and the ongoing annual such, so the allocations to ADA would actually show up in that annual report. I haven't looked. So it's, again, it's just, I always think of the evidentiary thing, if justice ever came in and investigated it, that annual plan, annual review is just a godsend, because you don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to show your evidence.
You know, what's interesting is the impact of COVID. Many of those projects were already vetted, designed, then constructed. Actually, during COVID, we didn't have the time or ability to vet projects in the public because of COVID. So now you're seeing that lag behind. So 22, if you, I mean, I guess this body looked at the ADA transition plan annual report, wasn't a lot of projects that were done in FY 22. If we get moving forward on some of these, like 21st Street, there'll be a lot, so.
But you can amend that thing and put those in if they didn't get it. And that's, I think your committee in the city can just do that.
Yeah, what that report does is just take a snapshot at that time. We compile all that data throughout the year. So I can print you out essentially a transition report at any date.
I don't, yes, and I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm just looking, I know how justice works. So, yeah.
Any other discussion about ADA budget? Try to drag out.
We kept cutting
Justice
off
time?
Matthew here. Was there something you wanted to say?
I think that it was
Apologize.
resolved through the letter. My concern anytime I see one person speaking for a group is just making sure that we do have some delineation between the one person and the group. The letter resolves that for me, so no
Yeah.
issues.
And I will say, I try to be extremely careful
Right.
to separate my personal things, which you find, I have quite a few.
Well,
And then DAC.
as long as there's an official statement coming from the group, then
Yeah,
that handles that.
and also gives me a scope.
Mhm.
So then, question on that one, just for specifics. I draft a letter to send in support. Is it something that still needs some form of approval? Like, would I email it to you, Nikki, and then?
No, because of the way the motion was made,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it, I mean.
So you guys just have to trust me.
yes.
All right.
I can help you if you want.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
And as for getting a hold of any one of us, you can get a hold of one of us. Do not ever get to the level of three.
No,
Is it three that we have the issue of the possible meeting?
actually.
Four?
Well,
It's four.
Because there's 7 of us.
Yeah, individually, yeah. So
Yeah.
don't reply all to any of the emails.
I've done it by accident and non-accident.
Okay, are we moving on?
Yep.
All right, does anybody have any future agenda items they would like to see come up? Any ideas?
Really nothing?
Any departments we wanna hear from?
Well, I always have 1,000 things that I'm looking at, so, but I separate this from that. And what's our mission statement? Do we have that on there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Advise-
Advise city leaders and residents on the reduction of barriers and the promotion of full accessibility through education and advocacy.
Can I make a comment? I mean, this is not an action item or anything else. I don't think we need it as it could be under commissioner comments, so I'll wait.
Do you know the date of our next meeting? It would be fourth, fifth, sixth, 13th, second Thursday, right?
Mm-hmm.
We always have a
yeah,
big calendar
13th.
in this room.
It'd be the 13th of July.
Hannah, got a big calendar in this room.
We used to have one, I don't know.
There used to be one.
I don't know
right,
what
the
happened there.
calendar.
You can say it's OUI can be.
Probably,
Sponsored by?
that year probably expired.
No doubt.
And we just didn't.
Could
Madam
project
Chair,
it.
well, I don't know if this is the best possible idea, but especially if we want to hear from any department heads of the city or anybody else, or any other budget items. I could figure out a way to do a presentation on the aging of the valley, the information that Interlink, where I work, has been collecting for a year and a half. Eric attended the last community summit, senior summit meeting, and the next one will be Wednesday, August 2nd. But the data, we're gliding into home plate in terms of collecting the necessary census statistics on what the valley can foresee by 2040. And it's very, very daunting, as I think you would agree, Eric, in the increase of the number of retirees that will be living in the valley. And short of all of you coming to one of our senior summit meetings, which you're all invited, you could all come, I could do a brief presentation with handouts at the next meeting. Because I think by then, July 13th, we'll have quite a bit of our material together. In a nutshell, we're now looking at 2 reports, not just one. One would be, which we are referring to as the silver report and the gold report. The silver report is the census data showing the aging of the valley. I walk around with these so I can hand them out to people who are interested. We did this immediately after the failure of the Clarkston School District bond. And while some of the data does separate Nez Perce and Asotin County, most of it combines it because we are one community in metropolitan area. So this graph represents what's happened the last 30 years. The solid dark line here is the number of students this is the students versus seniors graph. The number of students since 1990, and this represents the number of senior citizens living in the valley, the increase since 1990. And 30 years ago, when I was working for the Lewiston School District, it's amazing to me, there you go. It's amazing to me that there were more students than senior citizens by almost 1,000 in the valley, in both counties. And now the separation is huge and going to get much, much larger as we're projecting a growth of 8,000 more senior citizens or retirees by 2040. The second report, the gold report, it will be a proposed action plan that the community could choose to embrace or not embrace. And yes.
I think that would be a very interesting presentation, where you could offer up that information to us.
I would be
Yeah.
interested in that as well.
Yeah, I would too.
Well, be careful
absolutely.
not too much discussion, right, because it's not on the agenda, but we
Well-
can.
Well, we're
Well, it's
we're
not a
just discussing
discussion for
doing
a
it.
decision. In fact,
Yeah.
even at the next meeting, it wouldn't be a decision item.
We don't have.
There's nothing to decide, and not asking for the commission to.
I would like to
endorse
invite
it or
Mark to
anything.
speak on that issue at the next meeting. Could you do that as chair?
Yes.
And then you could put it on the agenda.
But you could easily substitute me if something emerges in the next month out of City Hall that's more, urgent. Something we have to deal with.
I do have a future agenda item. I'm sorry, it took me a while to put it all together, but transit is such a huge issue for our population. And we are kind of unique in that we have a pretty decent transit structure because we have cooperation between different states and tribal units and the municipalities. I would like to have, if it's possible, the directors for Lewiston, Asotin, and the Tribe Transit just come and speak about their thoughts of the present and the future of our transit system. I know right now we have north-south is somewhat of an issue, but east-west, I can get a lot of places, but also know that we have.
East-west in the valley or east-west across the states?
I can get to, what is it, Camiai or Kuski, and I can get to Asotin. And if I use Grapeline or whatever, I can get over to Walla Walla and Tri-Cities using the available transit systems. I'm saying it's not easy, but it can be done and it exists.
If you use who takes you to Walla Walla and the Tri-Cities?
There's a Grapeline, there's the Dayton County, there's a couple of transit
Never heard of
systems.
the Great Line.
Well, yeah, it's kind of interesting, it's there, I've used it. But if, that would be kind of a coordination effort, and I don't know if you could ask staff to arrange it, but it probably is more likely to occur if you arrange it.
All right, I do know, we had the Lewiston Transportation, right?
Yeah, we had
Come in.
Suzanne here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm looking at a bigger picture.
So talking about so they would put together
They could
something
just
about
come
how
and
they coordinate together?
just say, literally, it's how we're working together now and their view of the future. And right now, separate item, but north-south, there, like Megabus came in. I don't know how it's gonna affect things. I'm gonna use a bus here in a couple of weeks. If you didn't know, at the start of the year, a lot of the transit bus systems were supported by COVID money to keep them functioning. We would have lost almost all of them over COVID if that didn't happen. And as COVID was starting to well out towards the end, there was a lot of buying and selling of bus lines.
And you mean, yeah, intercity bus lines.
Intercity bus lines, and even I'm pretty sure they had money for the stuff here from it. But Greyhound got bought by some company with a J. Northwest Trailways got purchased by Salt Lake Express. Then Megabus came in to the company that's now Greyhound, and and they have partnered up, and they
So
partnered
it's
up with
like this all over
Saltwater
the valley.
Express. This has just happened in the last 2 to 3 months. And I know when they were doing it, I made a registration, took a trip, did everything I could to make sure the wheelchair, I have to give 48 hours notice to have a wheelchair on there. They were there, but because of communication issues, one of them, the chairs inside hadn't been moved, so it was virtually unworkable. And another one, the machine didn't work. Or actually, no, the other one, they didn't have one. So those are just issues that I use and try and find weaknesses and then help the companies get stronger, more related. I don't like to just, I'm gonna sue your house. I'm just gonna, we've had this problem, look what we can do. So here, it's just the view of what's their future view, because it directly relates to all of us here in the valley, including the citizens of Lewiston. Does that make any sense, what I'm saying? And I don't know, timing wise, I don't think it matters much. Mark has.
So it doesn't necessarily need to be next
Oh,
month.
no, I think it's
Just
gonna
when
take
it's
time to
gonna
coordinate it.
Cool, you gotta write it.
Right.
Well, I can augment a little bit, something on that. By way of preface, I heard something very recently in the last few days on public radio. Well, Idaho Public Radio, now that we can pick up the signal from Boise up here. Idaho is one of the few states in the country that not one penny of state money goes to public transit, not one penny. Well, what's available is all federal money, but the state doesn't augment it in any way, which is creating huge issues down in Boise Transit, or Treasure Valley Transit, whatever. And that's not the case across the river. And any organizations that work in both communities across the river, I don't know if OUI does, Madam Council President, but we can take advantage of Washington things. And so Washington did a quick grant program where they just sort of announced it in late May, that they were making a bunch of transportation money available, specifically rural transportation, training, and collaboration and planning. Nothing else, not to buy buses, not to do anything else. And, but that it's specifically rural would be foreclosing the Seattles and Spokanes and Tri-Cities and stuff like that. So I filed a grant application for quite a bit of money for Interlink on Tuesday, which was the deadline of that, not only in providing training, if granted, and the turnaround time is 3 weeks, I'll know by the end of the month whether we get this. If granted, our plan proposes a set of 2 conferences that we would have to hold in Clarkston, and specifically to do what Eric was just talking about, regional transportation, collaboration, planning. Now, because of the nature of the money, I was stressing bringing together the players from Asotin, Garfield, and Whitman counties. Well, of course, we would invite entities from Idaho, but that would not have strengthened our grant application had I admitted that. We have our speakers in mind, and we just want to share with the other entities that, you know, going back to this, if you envision a future of a great number of additional senior citizens, which pertains to the valley, these 2 counties, probably Garfield County, they're so sparsely populated, not Whitman County, because they're very, very young population, then you have to predict a future of a vastly larger number of non-drivers, of people who've given up driving, older people. But remember, non-drivers also includes disabled, low-income, young people, children. And so what Eric was sort of presupposing, I'm sure these groups coordinate in some way, I'd like to hear how. No, they really don't.
We'll find out.
They really don't. There's so little communication between all of us, and Interlink provides transportation too. And that's the reason we built in money.
Do you wanna come too?
Come where?
As part of the presentation with
Part of
the,
the discussion?
Well, first of all, we don't know when that would be held, and I will know by the beginning of July if we're getting this grant money.
I'm
If-
not caring about the grant, I'm just caring about you and your knowledge.
Well, yeah, I could, but I'd rather sit on this side of the table and accuse them.
Yeah,
well, which,
Of why don't they talk to each other? And you should definitely include Coast Transportation out of Colfax.
that's a good point.
Have you ever
because they
used
are-
Coast for
I am
intercity?
trying to use them, but I haven't had enough purpose yet.
Well, there's absolutely a difference between if you're a Washington resident and Idaho
Yeah, but
resident.
I'm Idaho resident, I don't know if I can even use it.
Yeah, that's the thing, I don't understand it either, they don't publicize, you might have to be on Medicaid, maybe, to use Coast.
Not
But they
there
will
yet.
transport you from Grangeville to Coeur d'Alene, I mean, they'll, you
Yes.
know, on demand, but their funding is always so iffy.
I'd rather have Coast here individually, to be honest.
There is sorry, what do you?
Rather than part of that coalition, I'd probably rather have them
Oh.
here first, just to understand them better.
Well, yeah.
just as like a Medicaid form of
COAST
transportation? or-
stands for Council on Aging Service Transportation, so they are headquartered in Colfax. Council on Aging is their version of our Community Action Partnership, CAP. They started transportation a long time ago, and then they just spread to all of the counties in eastern Washington and northern Idaho, door-to-door transportation, which is extremely expensive. And they own their own vans, they have paid drivers, they have volunteer drivers, drive their own car. It's very much a hybrid system. And that's who we direct people to when they want rides out of town. And we get those calls every week. Need someone to take me to the hospital in Coeur d'Alene, or the veterans home in Walla Walla. So we don't do that. Call Coast. Who else does that? There is no veterans transportation anymore to the clinic in Walla Walla, and that's one of the bigger demands too. But, oh my gosh, I hope we get this grant money and can hold these conferences. There is such a need to bring all the players to the table, identify the needs and the problems, and figure out, yes, the tribe is a player too, and figure out who can serve these people, because right now they have to make a half a dozen phone calls to figure out, how do I get from point A to point B?
What was the S and the T on Coast?
Service transportation. Well, I think, or senior transportation, service, I don't know. They have a fairly decent website, which still features Suzanne Senior, and she hasn't been their executive director for 8 years.
So, Mark, were you saying that you thought that Coast Transportation is a Medicaid service, or that it's,
Well, they definitely
It was-
are a Medicaid transport
So-
provider, but
I
it's,
think they do more, though, than just
they do.
Medicaid.
It's
So what-
possible in Idaho. Well, I think they may do more in Idaho too, but everything depends on funding sources and where they park their vans. We have a van in the valley that someone drives. Like, I was surprised when I went to Orfino a few years ago for a public meeting. They have a van, Coast has a van up there. They get grant money to buy vans. And that van is authorized to drive around town and pick up senior citizens to take them to the senior nutrition program, the lunch program, meal site, okay? I don't know what pays for that, because certainly the van down here in Lewiston, there is no service that does that unless you just take the public transit down to the Lewiston Community Center or Clarkston Community Center, but that's not a Coast service in the valley, but it is in Orfino. And it's a very patchwork system.
And I don't understand it.
I
I'd
don't
like
either.
to use it, but
And just one more thing, so most recently, and they've done a little publicity about this, they received money a few months ago, or in the fall, that's available only in the state of Washington from the Dan Thompson Foundation, that works really, really closely with government. You can only apply for funding through counties. Counties apply for funding, and they got this big grant, Sutton County got this big grant to subcontract to Coast to provide what's known as after-hours transportation to people with disabilities if you live in Washington.
yeah.
So they will run their vans late into the evening. and on Saturdays and Sundays, because the identified missing link, missing a problem, at least in Assotin County, were peoples with disabilities who had jobs and could take the bus to work, but they didn't get off till 8 o'clock at night, or they worked Saturdays, Sundays.
That's a big issue in Lewiston.
Yeah, there is some Saturday transit service.
Yes.
But none at all on Sunday. And so they get this grant money to hire and subcontract it out to Coast. It was like a few $100,000 to provide this kind of door-to-door service. Whether or not that's efficient, I'm not gonna comment, but, Coast will go wherever anyone gives them money and do whatever, but, you know, God bless that they exist. But the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
Okay. I'd like to get to comments, speech.
Commissioner comments?
Yeah.
Let's go to those, unless anybody else has a future agenda item that they would like to. Nope, all right, Eric.
Okay. I'm speaking as an individual here, and since I became disabled, I found out one of my strengths is to go in and find out weaknesses in ADA and other services and such, and then work cooperatively with entities or other things to try and resolve problems. And if you've never worked with me, you'll either love me or you'll hate me. Because what I'll do is start off with a very informal approach and then work up to, if we need to take this to justice, I'll take it to justice. So that's what I do personally. And we have the water issue here where everyone knows about. We suddenly lost it. Now that's a complicated situation where we also have a large disabled older population and such. And the water restrictions and how they were being applied, which I'm not faulting anything, it was extremely well done, professionally handled, etc. I have no gripes about it because I thought you got an emergency situation, what you do is you work with these people. But I was also aware that there's a population that wasn't gonna be able to do some of the things that were said, yet there would be other ways for them to do things and get the same possible result. And generally when we have things like that, and employment particularly, you run into this thing, is reasonable accommodation under the ADA. And what does that mean? It really depends on the circumstances. And does it apply or not to certain areas? That's a good question, and I can't give you a good answer on when it applies, when it doesn't. It's just kind of good sense to work with people when you have those unique scenarios. And staff actually has kind of a duty when there's reasonable accommodation present to advise people that this may be something they can look to. They just don't want to not mention it or whatever, because that is a problem. Now, why am I saying all this? So you know that when we had this water emergency, I immediately knew that this was something I was going to test if I had the right circumstances. So to be honest, I was trying to draw a ticket. Because what I did is like, I'm not going up on my west wall with a 10-foot wall and water these plants by hand. I assigned my wife the front yard to do all the watering, where it's the most of them complicated to get to. The rest of it, I just used my limited, we have zoned sprinkling systems for particularly this west wall in our garden. And all I did was say, okay, I'm gonna run this for 10 minutes, and I'm gonna run this for 10 minutes a day. And I'm gonna hide it when everyone's taking showers. Because I know that the city has real-time monitoring of water use. They can find what you're doing. Oh yeah, we're using the water right now. It's a good thing. It's made billing a lot. It's really helpful if you're gonna buy a house. Go ask them, how's that water meter doing? Anyway, so I got what I thought I got caught because my dentist had gotten caught. He got this notice. Then I got something in the mail and I thought, okay, this is it. I didn't read it. I ended up ratting myself out to the city. And the purpose being to find out how they doing with this, the issue. And I talked to Dustin, and Dustin handled me very professionally and said that they couldn't deal with the reasonable accommodation I requested, correct me if I'm wrong, at that time, because the statute, the city statute doesn't talk about reasonable accommodation, but in what is really reasonable accommodation anyway, they could adjust watering times or scheduling
Alternative
times.
watering schedule.
Alternative watering schedules, which actually is a reasonable accommodation. But I asked him to go a little further because I said, well, that's actually great, but that's not reasonable accommodation when you're following the statute. That gives a very limited approach. And I asked him to send it to legal on the difference between it's not in the statute, but we can do this versus reasonable accommodation. And it's just for future use. Then I went further and I had Nikki CC'd that, and he did. And what city's already been doing is they have been doing reasonable accommodation to those people who made a request for it. And to me, that was excellent. Everything I found in the process was in play. I'm complimenting the fact that they were aware of it, they were practicing it, it wasn't being put out there. I would put it on the actual notices saying if you need reasonable accommodation or whatever else, contact. But of course, you would have had 1,000 calls. But that's your guys' call, not mine. But I will say that they've been doing it, and I thought they handled it very well.
Reasonable accommodation as to methods of watering or when we water? I guess I don't.
It would depend on an individual situation. Each case of reasonable accommodation, you're gonna look at the circumstances and determine what can be done within the ability to do it. So I can't tell you what exactly it would be. What I heard first from the Public Works was the statute doesn't allow for it, but we can give you alternate watering schedules, which actually was them doing reasonable accommodation within that. And I just pushed it further to make sure that reasonable accommodation as it's understood and applied was actually being used rather than this is what the statute says. He can't really do that. He's in an awkward spot, which is why I asked it to go to legal. And I think you're the one who you'd already been doing it. So it was well done. I mean, everything was handled professionally.
I won't ask any more questions because I probably veered into discussion. But in terms of reporting, file this under unintended consequences, Dustin, but what that mandate from the city created was essentially the counterpart, Madam Council Member, to the snow shoveling issue, which is we are getting multiple calls a week at Interlake. Can somebody come and hand water my yard and my shrubbery because I can't use my sprinkler system and I'm too old and I can't stand out in the sun. It's like, no, we don't have any volunteer. Well, who does? I go, I don't know, but that's not a service that we do. Well, I need somebody to come and water for me because I can't do it.
I have heard of,
And so, you've heard of what? People who are doing it?
no.
People who need it done.
Who need it done.
Yeah, who invested a lot of money in sprinkler systems that they can't use this season. And so I thought, oh, it's snow shoveling all over again. And quite frankly, it's not a health or safety issue. It's a cosmetic beautification. That's how I feel about it. But that's not, unlike snow shoveling, slip and fall issues. But these people with beautiful yards take it very, very seriously, and they expect the community, if they're too old to do it, they expect the community to come up with a solution for them. And it's like, here we go again.
This is an agenda item.
Yes, sir.
It comes up from this, just talking about this. You heard me mention that my thought is on any notices I would put in.
Yes.
If you require reasonable accommodation, contact the ADA coordinator or something like that. And you don't want to do that because you're going to get 1,000 calls. But you do want to do that because you're actually educating the public and actually going beyond probably what's called for. Is that something that legal could come to here to talk about the pros and cons of doing that listing on notices? If you require reasonable accommodation, contact the ADA coordinator.
Well, there's our department visit.
Yeah, I think it's, and it's your call to share what you put on the agenda.
I think that would be actually very helpful, especially since I do think, Matt, I'm not sure if you're aware that you got put on the snow shoveling committee in your absence.
That's why we don't, make ourselves absent, right?
Mhm. So I think that that's something that would be very helpful, at least to that
That could end up with a
little ad
recommendation.
hoc, so.
Was it, just to clarify, is it like legal coming to discuss like pros and cons of doing that?
And
or-
where it applies and where it
Okay,
doesn't.
okay,
I think
okay.
that would be, so clarification, because I really don't know when reasonable accommodation applies. I can guarantee you it applies in the, employment arena. I can guarantee you I use the words in almost any circumstance I'm in. But I honestly do not know when it actually applies and when it does not.
I think that would be-
Gosh, if it applies for hearing aids at public meetings, it applies for construction zones where they have to create a temporary sidewalk around a construction zone, which is extremely complicated. We've had presentations on this. I'd be interested to hear when it doesn't apply, because I think it
Here's an
applies to
arena.
almost everything.
There is a provision in Article 3, because we're generally dealing with Article 2 of the ADA Act. Article 3 is private properties and such.
Well, sure.
And what a lot of them don't know in the private arena is that if I don't have access to their building and there's a simple, inexpensive fix to get that done, and I make a request and they deny it, that's an actionable item, because the code requires it. Now, if you're in DC, you're gonna wonder why all these places are not that way, because DC exempted certain regions of itself from the ADA in the buildings part. But that's something that, I don't know if that's, to me, it's a reasonable accommodation request.
It's
But-
more, we would like them to field questions about what is and is not.
Yeah, and
Reasonable
if,
accommodation.
even in Article 3, but I don't know if Article 3 was within the bounds of, does that make any sense? Because it's not within your bailiwick.
Yeah,
But
Title
it's-
II applies to
Right.
local government, and it would be accommodating services, programs. You have to give access to your services and programs and policies and things like that.
As I would say I had one reasonable accommodation request where someone, to get in and out of their house, they had put up a temporary ramp. Well, the ramp went across the sidewalk, which is in violation of a city rule. But at that place, they also had the entire curb, or the part that's owned by the city that you have to mow, was paved. So you could easily walk around it. And it was more a question of night and whatever else. Now, the city just gave them a ticket, and said you can't do that. The city staff did not evaluate or present the concept of reasonable accommodation, because at that time, they weren't aware of it.
So I think that would be an interesting thing to bring up to
It-
legal. if
Well,
they come in.
it was brought up to legal.
Oh, well, no, I mean, for a
Yes.
presentation.
Yeah,
Yes.
I put it
An
on
example of a
future
story to
agendas.
tell.
Yeah.
I put it on future agendas.
And it's really, that's more like the duty of a staff member to bring up the concept, and it's really an education issue. And we got it worked out. I just went up to the person who was in charge, which was Chris Davies at that time, and it was resolved in a minute. Yeah, it's fine, the only thing I saw was it needed marking for at night so people didn't get hurt tripping.
Madam Chair, that's not an unusual scenario. Our volunteer ramp builders decline to build ramps all the time with some frequency because they won't fit on the property without encroaching on the public right-of-way, which we will not do. And therefore, we decline the ramp, and the homeowner doesn't get, that safety mechanism that they need. Now, if there were ways to get the local jurisdiction to allow an encroachment or other kinds of accommodations or something, people who otherwise wouldn't get ramps might get ramps. So that would be an interesting topic.
Yeah, I would never call it encroachment. I would just simply call it a temporary use. There's a big difference in those terms.
Like sidewalk tables at cafes all over Main Street.
Those are encroachments that are allowed by statute. Now, it's gonna get worse.
I was surprised how many there were just driving down Main Street.
Well, I
Wow.
test them every time I go down, see if I can get around them, whatever not.
So maybe
And-
encroachment can be something we talk about.
Sure.
Next
You're
time?
late.
Hmm?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right. Any staff liaison comments? Nope.
Says action item.
I know, it's the program, for some reason it enters that in, I gotta figure out how to remove it.
Okay, so chatbot is, or whatever that is. I don't know if you know about that one or not.
Yeah, GT,
chat.
what is it?
GPT.
GPT chat box.
Yes, yeah.
I've used it, it's interesting.
So did I. I was shocked at how good the result was that came out.
All right.
Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned,
Thank you.
and I will see what I can do about the Lewiston, Stoughton, and Clarkston.
Yeah, and that's not a rush.
Mark, can I make?
Oh, I doubt it will be.